By the late 10th century AD, slavery had largely disappeared across Europe, a surprising development for a region once dominated by the Roman Empire, where slavery was a cornerstone of society. Many believe this change came from a growing moral consciousness, but the truth is far more complex. In today's video, we'll explore the real reasons behind the decline of slavery in medieval Europe. Under the Roman Empire, slavery had been a cornerstone of the economy. Millions of slaves worked in agriculture, mining, and domestic roles, providing the backbone for Rome's wealth and expansion. However, with the empire's collapse, the infrastructure that sustained this system disappeared. Once thriving urban centers, like Rome and Constantinople, which had served as hubs of commerce, administration, and culture, either declined or lost their prominence. Trade routes that had connected Europe to the Mediterranean and beyond became unsafe, cutting off access to goods, wealth, and resources. In this new reality, the centralized economy of the Roman Empire collapsed, giving way to a decentralized system. Power shifted from cities to rural areas, where survival depended almost entirely on agriculture. Large estates, or manors, became the primary units of economic production, controlled by feudal lords who relied on local resources rather than far-reaching trade networks. With the collapse of urban centers, the demand for slave labor diminished. Cities became depopulated, and the industries that relied on enslaved workers, such as manufacturing and trade, disappeared. Feudal lords, now isolated in their rural domains, still needed a labor force, but faced mounting challenges. Feudal lords, who governed their isolated territories, lacked the military resources and coordination to conduct the kind of widespread campaigns necessary to capture and enslave large populations. Without centralized authority or access to new enslaved labor, the system of slavery began to wane. The decentralization of power also disrupted the economic mechanisms that supported slavery. In the Roman world, enslaved individuals were essential for agriculture, mining, and urban industries. Feudal lords, however, operated in a more localized economy, where long-distance trade was rare and self-sufficiency was key. The high costs and logistical challenges of acquiring and maintaining enslaved labor made it impractical for most feudal estates. Additionally, the instability of this period made long-distance trade risky, further cutting off access to enslaved individuals from outside regions. Each lord's focus was primarily on defending their land and maintaining control over their vassals and serfs, rather than seeking new enslaved labor. The Catholic Church also played a crucial role in the decline of slavery in medieval Europe by shaping moral, legal, and societal attitudes. As Christianity spread throughout Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire, the Church condemned the enslavement of Christians, declaring it a grave sin. Since much of Europe's population was Christian or was converting to Christianity, this greatly limited the pool of people who could be enslaved. Church leaders often emphasized the spiritual equality of all people before God, which, while not outright abolishing slavery, created moral barriers to its practice within Christendom. The Church also influenced the transition from slavery to serfdom. Serfdom, which bound workers to the land rather than treating them as property, was seen as a more acceptable form of labor under Christian doctrine. Unlike slavery, serfs retained certain rights and were not bought or sold as commodities. This system aligned more closely with the Church's teachings, which valued human dignity and sought to mitigate the harsher aspects of economic exploitation. By promoting serfdom over outright slavery, the Church helped create a labor system that fit within the moral framework of medieval Europe. In contrast to the brutalities of slavery, serfs had certain legal protections, such as the right to pass on their land to heirs and the expectation of protection from external threats. Although they were still subject to the authority of their lords, serfs were not as utterly dependent and dispossessed as slaves, which made serfdom a more acceptable system within medieval European society. This marked a gradual but significant decline in slavery within Europe, especially by the 10th century. While slavery didn't disappear entirely, particularly in the Mediterranean and areas where Muslims and non-Christians lived, serfdom became the dominant labor structure, and slavery was no longer as integral to the European economy. The decline of slavery in medieval Europe was not a result of moral or ethical objections alone, rather a complex mix of economic, political, and social changes. Despite this shift, slavery was not permanently eradicated from European influence, as the transatlantic slave trade later revived its horrific practice. Slavery in medieval Europe might seem like a relic of the past, but its story is far more intricate than most realize. Yet history is full of surprising and downright strange stories, like the Court of Versailles, where hygiene, or the lack of it, defined royal life. Trust me, you won't look at cleanliness the same way again.